He tried to sell his wife. Her response changed everything. Inspiring love story. Sienna stood frozen in the boutique dressing room, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The designer dress she wore cost more than most people earned in a month. But she felt nothing. No joy, no excitement, just the familiar hollow emptiness that had become her constant companion. "Sienna, are you finished trying those on?" Damien's voice cut through the door like a blade. "We don't have all day." She gathered the pile of dresses carefully, each one more expensive than the last. Her husband had insisted she try on the entire collection, though she knew she would never choose for herself. Damien always made the final decision about everything in her life. When she emerged from the dressing room, Damien was leaning against the counter with his phone in hand, barely glancing up at her. The sales assistant, a young woman named Claire, watched them with curious eyes. "I'll take all of them," Damien announced, pulling out his platinum card with a flourish. "My wife deserves only the best." Sienna felt her cheeks burn. His words sounded generous, but she knew better. This wasn't kindness. It was control dressed up as affection, another way to remind her that everything she had came from him. "That's very generous, sir," Claire said, beginning to ring up the purchases. As they waited, another customer entered the boutique. A tall man with sharp features and an expensive suit, accompanied by a younger woman who looked uncomfortable. Sienna recognized the dynamic immediately. It was like looking into a mirror at another version of her life. "Why are you just standing there?" Damien snapped at Sienna suddenly. "Go wait by the door." She moved automatically, years of conditioning making her body obey before her mind could protest. But something felt different today. Something inside her was shifting, like ice beginning to crack. The tall stranger approached Damien, and Sienna watched as her husband's face changed, becoming animated and friendly in a way he never was with her. They talked in low voices, and she caught fragments of their conversation. Business deals, investments, opportunities. Then the stranger looked at Sienna with an expression that made her skin crawl. "Your wife is quite beautiful," he said to Damien. "Thank you," Damien replied, as if he had created her himself. "She's very obedient." The word hung in the air like poison. Obedient, as if she were a pet, not a person. The stranger's smile widened. "I'm having a private gathering tonight at my estate. Exclusive guests only. You should bring her. I'm sure she would be quite popular." Something in his tone made Sienna's stomach turn. She understood what he was suggesting, and horror washed over her when she saw Damien actually considering it. "That's an interesting proposition," Damien said slowly. "What kind of gathering are we talking about?" "The kind where everyone gets what they want," the stranger replied. "The kind where beautiful women like your wife make men very happy and everyone profits." The boutique seemed to spin around Sienna. She felt Claire's eyes on her, filled with concern and pity. The younger woman with the stranger looked at the floor, her hands trembling. "She never says no," Damien offered, and those 4 words shattered something fundamental inside Sienna's chest. She had given up so much for this marriage. Her career, her friends, her sense of self. She had told herself it was love, that Damien's control was just his way of caring for her. But in this moment, watching him casually discuss selling her dignity to a stranger, the truth became undeniable. This wasn't love. It had never been love. "Actually," Sienna heard herself say, her voice sounding strange and distant, "I do say no." Both men turned to look at her, surprise written across their faces. Damien's expression quickly shifted to anger. "Excuse me?" he said quietly, dangerously. "I said no," Sienna repeated, louder this time. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs, but she didn't back down. "No to your gathering. No to whatever sick game you two are playing. No to all of it." The stranger laughed uncomfortably and backed away. "Perhaps another time," he muttered, making a quick exit. Damien grabbed Sienna's arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. "Do you have any idea who that was? What opportunities you just ruined?" "I don't care," Sienna said, pulling her arm free. "I'm done being something you trade for opportunities." Claire stepped forward hesitantly. "Should I call someone?" she asked quietly. Damien released Sienna immediately, his public persona snapping back into place. "That won't be necessary," he said coldly. "We're leaving. Keep the dresses." Outside the boutique, the afternoon sun felt too bright. Sienna stood on the sidewalk, her whole body shaking, realizing she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. Damien stood beside her, silent and seething. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "You've embarrassed me. When we get home, we're going to have a serious conversation about your behavior." But Sienna barely heard him. She was too busy feeling something she hadn't felt in years. It burned in her chest like a newly lit fire, warm and fierce and absolutely terrifying. It was hope. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional angry breath from Damien. Sienna sat in the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap, but her mind was racing. She had said no. After 6 years of marriage, after countless moments of swallowing her pride and her voice, she had finally said no. When they arrived at their penthouse apartment, Damien slammed the car door hard enough to make her flinch. He stormed ahead, leaving her to follow like she always did. But something had changed. Her feet felt heavier, more reluctant to carry her back into that gilded cage. Inside, Damien poured himself a drink and turned to face her. His expression was controlled now, calculating. "Sienna, sweetheart," he began, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "I think we need to talk about what happened today." She said nothing, just watched him. Really watched him for the first time in years. She saw the manipulator behind the handsome face, the controller behind the generous gestures. "That man today, Julian Thorne, he's worth millions. Do you understand what you did? You humiliated me in front of someone who could have changed our lives." "Changed your life," Sienna corrected quietly. "Everything is always about your life, your career, your image. What about mine?" Damien's jaw tightened. "Your life? Everything you have is because of me. This apartment, your clothes, your jewelry. Without me, you'd still be working that pathetic office job, going nowhere." The words were meant to hurt, to remind her of her place. And once, they would have worked. But something had broken loose inside Sienna at the boutique, and it couldn't be put back. "You're right," she said, surprising him. "I did have a pathetic office job, but I had friends, I had dreams, I had myself. And then I married you, and I lost all of it." "You chose this life," Damien shot back. "You wanted to be taken care of." "I wanted to be loved," Sienna whispered. "There's a difference." Before Damien could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and saw an unknown number. The message read, "The young woman at the boutique. If you need help, there are people who care. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m., Blue Haven Cafe." It was from Claire, the sales assistant. Sienna's throat tightened. A stranger was offering her more kindness than her own husband had in years. "Who's texting you?" Damien demanded, reaching for her phone. For the second time that day, Sienna found her voice. "That's none of your business." His face darkened. "None of my business? I'm your husband. Everything about you is my business." "Not anymore," Sienna said, backing toward the bedroom. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight." She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, her whole body trembling. She could hear Damien shouting on the other side, demanding she open the door, threatening consequences. But she didn't move. She sat on the floor and let herself cry for the first time in years. The next morning, Sienna woke early. She dressed carefully, choosing her own clothes for once, simple jeans and a sweater instead of the designer outfits Damien preferred. She left before he woke up, leaving only a note. "Out for the morning. The Blue Haven Cafe was a small, cozy place in a part of the city she rarely visited. Claire was already there, sitting at a corner table with another woman. When Sienna entered, they both stood. "Thank you for coming," Claire said warmly. "This is my friend Rebecca. She works with a support organization for women in difficult situations." Rebecca had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Please, sit down. You're safe here." Sienna felt tears threatening again. "I don't even know why I came. I just needed to talk to someone who isn't him." "That's a brave first step," Rebecca said. "Can you tell us about your situation?" And so Sienna talked. She told them about how Damien had slowly isolated her from her friends and family, how he controlled every aspect of her life, from her clothing to her schedule, how his gifts were really just chains disguised as generosity, how yesterday he had essentially tried to offer her to another man for business opportunities. Claire reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I've seen women in your position before. My sister was in a similar marriage. It took her years to leave, but she did. And now she's happier than she's ever been." "I don't know if I can leave," Sienna admitted. "I don't have money of my own. No job. Nowhere to go. He made sure of that." Rebecca pulled out a card. "We help women like you. We have resources, temporary housing, legal assistance. You don't have to stay trapped." Sienna took the card, holding it like a lifeline. "He'll be so angry." "Anger is his problem, not yours," Rebecca said firmly. "You deserve a life where you're not afraid, where you make your own choices." They talked for 2 hours. Rebecca explained options Sienna had never considered. Claire shared her sister's story of rebuilding her life after leaving an abusive marriage. Slowly, Sienna began to see a path forward, narrow and frightening, but real. When she finally returned to the apartment, Damien was waiting. His face was tight with barely controlled rage. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "Coffee with a friend," Sienna replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "What friend?" "You don't have friends." The cruelty of the statement would have destroyed her yesterday. Today it just made her sad. "You're right. You made sure I didn't. But that's changing." Damien stepped closer, trying to use his physical presence to intimidate her. "Sienna, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. Now." She met his eyes without flinching. "No." "What did you say?" "I said no, Damien. No, I won't stop. No, I won't be silent anymore. No, I won't let you control me." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, squeezing painfully. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything I've given you." "You gave me a prison," Sienna said quietly, not pulling away. "A beautiful, expensive prison. But I'm done serving my sentence." Something in her calm defiance made him release her. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "If you leave me," he said, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper, "you'll have nothing. No one will want you. You'll be alone." Sienna touched the card in her pocket, feeling its solid reassurance. "Maybe. But I'll have something more important than your money or your name." "What's that?" "Myself." She walked to the bedroom and began packing a small bag. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. Damien followed, alternating between threats and promises, trying every manipulation tactic he knew. But Sienna had heard them all before, and they had lost their power. As the sun set, painting the expensive apartment in golden light, Sienna stood at the door with her bag. Damien sat on the couch, his head in his hands, finally silent. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight," she said. "I'll send someone for the rest of my things." "Sienna, please," he said, and for a moment he almost sounded human. "Don't do this. I love you." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "No, Damien, you love owning me. There's a difference." As she walked out the door, leaving behind the life she'd known for 6 years, Sienna felt terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The future was uncertain, but it was hers, and that made all the difference. 3 months had passed since Sienna walked out of Damien's apartment. 3 months of living in a small studio that Rebecca's organization had helped her secure. 3 months of job interviews, therapy sessions, and slowly rebuilding the person she used to be. 3 months of freedom. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of her modest apartment, and Sienna smiled as she made her coffee. It was cheap, instant coffee, nothing like the expensive beans Damien used to buy, but it tasted like victory. Her phone rang. The lawyer Rebecca had connected her with, a sharp woman named Victoria Chen, was calling about the divorce proceedings. "Good morning, Sienna." Victoria's voice was crisp and professional. "I have news. Damien's lawyer has sent over a new settlement offer." Sienna's stomach tightened. "What does he want now?" "Actually, this one is different. He's agreed to most of our terms. Fair division of assets, no contest on the grounds of emotional abuse. He's even agreed to pay for your education if you want to go back to school." "Why would he do that?" Sienna asked suspiciously. Damien never gave anything without strings attached. "My guess? His company is about to go public. The last thing he needs is a messy divorce trial where his treatment of you becomes public record. He's protecting his image." Sienna laughed bitterly. "Of course he is. It was always about his image. The question is, do you want to accept? You could push for more. We have documented evidence of his controlling behavior, the incident at the boutique with witnesses." Sienna thought for a moment. Part of her wanted to make him pay, to drag him through the courts and expose everything he had done. But another part, the part that was healing, just wanted to be free. "I'll accept," she said finally. "I don't want his money or his guilt. I just want this to be over." "Are you sure? You deserve compensation for what you went through." "I'm sure. The best revenge isn't making him pay. It's building a life he can't touch." After hanging up, Sienna got ready for work. She had landed a position at a small marketing firm, nothing glamorous, but it was hers. Her ideas, her work, her success. Her boss, a kind woman named Patricia, had taken a chance on her despite the gap in her resume. At the office, her co-worker and new friend James greeted her with his usual warm smile. "Morning, Sienna. Ready for the big presentation?" She had been working on a campaign for a local business for weeks. Today, she would present it to the client, her first major project since returning to work. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, feeling nervous butterflies in her stomach. The good kind of nervous, the kind that came from caring about something she had created. The presentation went better than she had hoped. The client loved her ideas, and Patricia pulled her aside afterward with pride in her eyes. "You've got real talent, Sienna. I knew it the moment I met you. You just needed the chance to show it." Those words meant more to Sienna than any expensive gift Damien had ever bought her. That evening, she met Claire and Rebecca at their now regular dinner spot, a small Italian restaurant where the pasta was homemade and the atmosphere was warm. "You're glowing," Claire observed, pouring wine for everyone. "Something good happened today." Sienna told them about the successful presentation and the divorce settlement. Rebecca raised her glass in a toast. "To new beginnings and second chances." They clinked glasses, and Sienna felt a wave of gratitude for these women who had helped save her life. They had become the sisters she never had. Proof that family wasn't always about blood. "There's something else," Sienna said, pulling out her phone. "I've been thinking about starting a blog, sharing my story. Maybe it could help other women who are in situations like I was." "That's an amazing idea," Rebecca said enthusiastically. "Do you know how powerful your voice could be? How many women need to hear that they're not alone?" "I'm scared," Sienna admitted. "Damien will probably see it. He might try to stop me." "Let him try," Claire said fiercely. "He doesn't control you anymore. Tell your story. Own it." Later that night, alone in her apartment, Sienna sat at her laptop and began to write. She wrote about the slow erosion of her identity, about the golden cage she had lived in, about the moment in the boutique when everything changed. She wrote about fear and courage, about losing herself and finding her way back. When she finally posted it, her hands were shaking, but she hit publish anyway. Within days, her blog exploded. Women from all over shared their own stories in the comments. Some were still trapped in controlling relationships. Others had escaped and wanted to offer hope. The response was overwhelming and beautiful. Then, one evening, her phone rang, an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello? Sienna." It was Damien's voice, but different somehow. Smaller. "I read your blog." Her first instinct was to hang up, but curiosity made her stay on the line. "And? I wanted you to know that I'm in therapy now. The company insisted on it after the divorce became known. I've been talking about our marriage, about how I treated you." He paused. "I was wrong, Sienna. About everything." She waited, saying nothing. "I'm not calling to ask you to come back," he continued. "I know that ship has sailed. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, truly sorry. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." Sienna felt tears prickling her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of closure. "Thank you for saying that, Damien. I hope you mean it. I hope you get the help you need and never treat another person the way you treated me." "I won't. I promise." He hesitated. "Are you happy now?" Sienna looked around her small apartment. The second-hand furniture, the walls she had painted herself, the photos of her new friends on the bookshelf, the laptop where she wrote words that mattered, the life she had built from nothing. "Yes," she said simply. "I am. Good. You deserve to be." He paused again. "Goodbye, Sienna." "Goodbye, Damien." She hung up and sat in the quiet for a moment, processing. Then she opened her laptop and began writing her next blog post. 6 months later, Sienna stood in front of a room full of women at a domestic abuse survivors conference. She was one of the speakers, sharing her story and the lessons she had learned. As she looked out at the faces watching her, some crying, some nodding in recognition, she felt a profound sense of purpose. After her speech, a young woman approached her, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm in the same situation you were, and hearing you speak, hearing that there's a way out, and that life can be good again, it gives me hope." Sienna took her hands. "What's your name?" "Natasha." "Natasha, listen to me. You are stronger than you know. You are worth more than he tells you. And when you're ready, there are people who will help you. You don't have to do it alone." She gave Natasha Rebecca's card and watched as the young woman clutched it like the lifeline it was. That night, back in her apartment, Sienna received an email from a publisher. They had been following her blog and wanted to know if she would be interested in writing a book about her experience. She stared at the email for a long time, remembering the woman she used to be. The one who was afraid to speak, afraid to choose, afraid to exist. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had learned that saying no was just the beginning. Sienna opened a new document and began to type. This time, she wasn't just writing her story. She was writing a map for others to find their way home to themselves. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, other women were trapped in gilded cages, believing there was no way out. But Sienna knew better now. There was always a way out. Sometimes it started with a single word, spoken in a boutique on an ordinary afternoon. Sometimes it started with the courage to walk through a door and not look back. Sometimes it started with meeting your own eyes in the mirror and remembering who you used to be, who you could be again. Freedom was never easy. It was terrifying and uncertain and required more courage than staying ever did. But it was worth it. Every difficult step, every sleepless night, Every moment of doubt was worth it for the chance to live a life that was authentically, completely, beautifully your own. Sienna smiled as she wrote, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. She had found her voice, and now she would use it to light the way for others. The story of her silence was over. The story of her strength was just beginning. And this time, she was the one writing the ending.